Okay, welcome everyone to the City of Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment meeting for March 3rd, 2022, which is now called to order. If you are not the applicant, hopefully you filled out one of the white forms that's available outside, and we'll call on you when your matter is ready to be heard. If you are not the applicant, please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. And if many folks have the same or similar comments, try to designate one speaker to speak on behalf of the group, and then we will allow for individual comments for additional information after that. We will first hear from the applicants, and then any supporters, and then any protests, and we'll give the applicant the opportunity to speak again, and then the board will deliberate and then vote. Please don't interrupt board members when they're speaking, because it helps the meetings go by faster, and we need a clear record. First item on the agenda is to receive the minutes from the February 17th, 2022 meeting. Do you have any changes to the minutes or a motion?
Motion to approve minutes.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to receive the minutes from February 17th, 2022. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And I'm going to abstain because I haven't got a chance to watch the entire proceeding. So,
I was also not present, so I'm going to abstain.
so can we move that to the next meeting?
I think you can.
Okay. So we'll move that item to the next meeting. Next item on the agenda is continuance requests or withdrawals. What's this? I'm not sure if we have any.
I don't have any.
Okay. Was anyone needing to continue their item or withdraw their item? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move to items requiring a separate vote.
First item for public hearing is item 1, case 15002. It's a request for Wakefield Homes for a variance for the setback in the R2 district located at 1021 Northeast 18th Street.
Hi, I'm Mike Monroe, and I work for Wakefield Homes.
Okay, if you could just give us a brief overview of your application for the purposes of the record.
Yes, we mistakenly built over the build line by 4 feet 4 inches. We are, however, still a good 57 feet away from the street, and in order to alleviate this from going forward, once our survey pins are put down and grade is done, then we'll personally go out and put the foundation pins in, because we found that's where the mistake was made from the foundation company.
Board members, any questions or comments? Yeah. Still wish there was a way to catch these.
Yeah, I think the survey or the foundation companies may be using wheels to measure their distances instead of an actual
Yes, this is the first time.
appropriate measuring
Yeah, this is the
device.
first time this has ever happened to us.
I think the fact that it's so minimal, as the staff comments point out, the fact that it's so minimal, relatively minimal, works in your favor.
Another thing we didn't point out is that 18th Street has an enormous amount of right-of-way. It looks like it's maybe 100 feet wide. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, we got extremely lucky there.
I don't have anyone signed up to speak. Was anyone else hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? Okay. Hearing none, board members, questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case 15002 for the reason that it meets, well, let me make sure that's the right. Yep, okay. For the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 2, case 15,000, request of Drew Donoski for a variance to the driveway separation in the C3 district at 5900 North May Avenue.
Good afternoon, Matt Moore, Claymore Engineering, here today on behalf of the prospective buyer of the property at 5900 North May. The property is currently in Armando's Mexican food restaurant. My client is looking to redevelop this property with a new coffee shop. Armando's will be scraped and removed. The request here before you today is the existing driveway off of 58th is currently 40 feet from May, which is not meeting the stated engineering requirements. There's another driveway on 58th that we're planning to close. So the request here is to maintain that one existing driveway on 58th at that location shown, which is 40 feet from May. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
Thought for a second that some of these comments from other agencies might be critical, but I don't think that's correct. So I don't think I have any questions. But board members, any questions or comments? And I was going to ask what the proposed use was going to be, but you said a coffee shop. So
It's basically a Dutch Brothers.
okay. Is there anyone else that was hoping to speak on this application? Okay. Hearing none, I think we can take questions, comments, or a motion.
Move approval of case number 15000 for the reasons that it meets the statutory conditions for the variance requested.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case 15,000, for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for variance. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Item 3, case 15,006, request of Robert Haggard for a variance of limits of no access at 5420 Northwest 170th Terrace.
Robert Haggard, the first thing I want to say is there wasn't any kind of disregard on Fillmore Chambers design firm. They've drawn over 16,000 houses in their career, and if you look at the property, I didn't get to put this drawing in, but when we looked at to design this house, we had two choices of a driveway. On the right side, which would be you would have to back out into the intersection, because this particular street, for some reason, they put a median. If you put it over here, you would be forced into backing into a median, going all this way, turning a U-turn to leave every time you left your house. But that notwithstanding, there are 9 houses on Whitehall Road that have access to Whitehall Road. The garages do and the driveways. Secondly, Whitehall Road isn't unique. It's a wide street, a normal street that takes off of Hefner and exits out at MacArthur. And going out there just before coming here, there isn't anything unique to that street that would really require no access for the driveways. So we just felt like that the best place was where we designed it. And then, as it says in my petition, we went all the way to building the driveway before it was discovered that the city overlooked this little note. If you look at the plat, it is a very obscure note. The city overlooked it with all the electrical inspections, mechanical inspections, whatever inspections. They never knew about it until the driveway people picked it up. So we didn't just blatantly disregard any of the codes or rules, and that's it.
So even if this were caught earlier, you would still have it in this configuration? I think it's kind of what you're saying.
You mean when we submitted the plans for a permit, if they had
Originally?
said you can't do this? No.
Okay. I'm trying to think of the alternative.
But we would have,
We're trying to think of the alternative here.
well, the house is built.
Right, but before the house was built, I'm trying to think of what the alternative would be.
Well, if we had discovered that note that measures about 1/8 of an inch by 1/8 of an inch up in the corner, and I called the engineer and I said, why did they have a no access? He goes, I don't know. I said, yeah, but you did this for the owner. He goes, I don't know, they just wanted no access. So, I mean, he didn't
Do you have
have,
any idea?
Yeah, if we could go back to the map,
all those houses,
Is the plat for the entire neighborhood?
yeah, all the way from, just to
Yeah.
the north, you don't see Hefner. Down to the left is MacArthur, and all of those circles have driveways that somehow have gotten there past the city.
the Whitehall, is it Whitehall Boulevard is a collector street, so it's intended to get traffic through the neighborhood. And in that case, we don't allow driveways on collector streets where they have other access. But you can see where all those circles are platted lots that front and take access to Whitehall. So
If you
it's
take a look at the circle of our project, you can see a light gray median
Yeah,
Yeah,
back out into the intersection.
that, median's awfully handy for,
yeah.
knows why that's there, but yeah, that would be the peculiarity for me, would be that median.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe this was missed on those 9 other properties, or maybe they got variances. I haven't seen, variances on those, but
Well, truthfully, engineering-wise, to answer your question, if we were at the design phase and we designed the house like we did, and then we discovered it, I would have come for a variance just simply based on the median on that one street. None of the other streets have a median.
right.
And that I would have to back out into the intersection.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at earlier. I think you would have been here either before the permitting process or now.
Well, that's true, but
On the same argument, so.
the city,
Right, yeah. Yeah, okay. I don't have anyone else signed up to speak on this. Was there anyone else that was hoping to speak on this application? Okay. Seeing none, board members, I think we can take questions, comments, or a motion.
I'll move approval.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case 15006 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved. Thank you.
Item 4, case 15,008, request of Johnson and Associates for a variance to the platted front and side building lines at 2640 Somerset Place.
Good afternoon, Mark Zitzel with Johnson & Associates, 1 East Sheridan Avenue. On behalf of the applicant, we have a vacant property here that is zoned R1 single family, and under R1 zoning, there is a 25-foot minimum setback and 5-foot side yard setbacks. What we're requesting here is a variance to the platted setback. There's a fairly large discrepancy between what the zoning allows for and what the plat maybe had originally envisioned. The platted setback line on this property is 65 feet, which we would note is a fairly excessive setback. And I have the plat here. When you look at this neighborhood, the plat actually staggered setbacks along Somerset. Our lot is in blue, and so the setbacks were moving up and down as you move down and through Somerset. What's interesting, I think somewhat similar to the case you just heard, I think building permits may have been issued without reviewing the plat over the last several decades. This neighborhood has been established for quite some time. It's now starting to see some redevelopment with larger homes. I think if you were to look to our northeast, there's approximately a 9,000, 10,000 square foot home with a 46-foot setback. And when you're looking at this neighborhood, I think the staff noted that there have been 5 variances to setbacks within this plat already, but a lot of these homes don't meet their platted setback, either through an error or because they were granted a variance. So while the setback on the surface might seem that it is an excessive request of 15 feet, it's really building what would be in line with the rest of the neighborhood. We met with the neighbors
Before you-
yesterday.
Before you move on, I had one question.
Yes.
Because it's relevant to this exhibit that you just presented. We have an exhibit as well that sort of lists the, I guess, the actual setbacks. This was in your application, if that's helpful to you. I don't know if this is the same thing you just referenced. But the question I had was, is this the actual setback of where the property actually is, or is this isn't the platted setback, is it?
Correct. The red lines are noting the actual setback, and we've actually updated that. This was done using county GIS layers. After we received the petition from the neighborhood, we went out with a survey crew and we looked at where our setback would actually fall on the property because there was a significant amount of concern. And what we found is the GIS layers were off by about 5 feet. So, for example, the neighbor to our immediate east, they're actually set back 47 feet, not 53. But so what we found, the homes were a little bit closer. But in any case, they were still exceeding the platted setback of the property.
And this is just to show sort of that your proposed variance would be consistent with the neighboring properties?
You're precisely correct. So the green line is what the average setback of all of those lots would be, which is about 51 feet. So after we received the petition, I reached out to Ms. Ramsey. She had worked with the neighbors to discuss it. I don't believe it was in the packet. There was one email that was sent in from our immediate neighbor to the east seeking his name to be removed from from the petition. I think there was some confusion. Well, I think what happened here was there were flags in the ground that were placed by Cox and other utility companies, and there was immediate concern when the neighbors received the notice. I think these can sometimes be difficult to understand, especially when you're dealing with minimum setbacks. And there were flags in the ground that the neighbors thought that is where they're going to put the house. And if I was them, I would have been concerned as well because it was about 20 feet off the back of the curb. Somerset has 60 feet of right-of-way. In a typical residential neighborhood, you might see 50 feet. So there's an excessive amount of space between the curb and our property line that is just right-of-way. So we went out there, we staked the property line, so we staked the property line, our proposed setback of 50 feet, and the setback on the plat of 65 feet. The moment we showed up out there, Ms. Ramsey and a couple other neighbors immediately said, we're okay with this. We don't have a concern. We were told it was going to be up here based on a flag. And I think sometimes misinformation can spread, and I think in this case that's what happened. I don't know that Ms. Ramsey is here today. I don't see her. But we did meet out in the field. She expressed that her and her neighbors no longer had a concern at 50 feet. And we showed them this exhibit. There are not house plans at this time, so we mimicked the house to our west. If that same house was put on this property, it's upside down, you would see that we are actually slightly behind both structures at 50 feet. So we are in line with the rest of the neighborhood. So while I think on the surface, again, 15 feet to a setback sounds like it's excessive, but we're dealing with a 65-foot platted setback, which is irregular and is not mentioned in the zoning code either. The zoning has a 25-foot setback.
So what about that rear yard setback? It looks like as rendered, you'll have a greater setback than those two adjacent properties. I mean, is that an accurate rendering or
I'm sorry, on the rear yard?
yeah.
We're not seeking any relief on the rear yard.
I know, but my concern that I had, and I think the concern folks have with issues like these are overbuilding on the property, and so I sort of envisioned a lot larger property. And so that brings to, at least in my mind, it brings that rear setback into play. And I don't know what it is, but it doesn't look like it's going to be an issue based on this rendering whenever you put it in relation to the other two properties.
That's right. If anything, it gives a greater distance from the rear by allowing us to move up a little bit closer to the street. These lots, I believe, are 170 feet deep, so they're also deeper than a typical platted subdivision lot. But yeah, the platted, or the setback in the rear would just be per the zoning code. And when you look on here, you can see that there have been large homes that still conform to the zoning code and impervious cover, that'll all still be met here. The second portion of the variance request is to the side yard setbacks. The plat had a note on it of 10 feet, but it was not drawn on the actual plat. And so I think, again, I think that has been caught, or has not been caught at building review. Our neighbor has a 5-foot setback on his property. And again, he retracted his signature from that petition, stating that he had no issue with it, and the side yard setbacks only really affect our 2 immediate neighbors. I wish Ms. Ramsey was here today so she could offer you that the petition has been retracted. But that is where we're at. We think that it is an appropriate request, particularly when you look at the rest of the neighborhood where the homes are actually built. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I think you've established, or you've addressed the front yard setback issue, but the side yard, to me, if you could maybe speak a little bit more on that, because that's for safety and fire and spacing and things like that, pretty important.
Sure. So the zoning code establishes a 5-foot side yard setback. That requires the homes to be 10 feet apart, which meets fire and building code. That's what we're seeking. We're seeking permission to build in accordance with the zoning code. We're not seeking a variance from that. For whatever reason here, the plat had a note on it that sought 10-foot side yard setbacks, which would have been 20 feet in between homes. But on either case, our neighbors did not adhere to that. They're adhering to the zoning code, and we're seeking the same allowance that they have had. And I think there have been other variances granted for side yard setbacks within this plat for the same reason. We're not proposing a situation that would be any more dangerous than any other neighborhood in Oklahoma City.
Do you have any comparisons for the side yard setback, the way that you do here for the front yard setback? I know you said that I guess one neighbor or two has a 5-yard setback, but.
So, I mean, you'd be able to see it on the aerial here where our neighbors are. I mean, this one, it appears almost on top because the black line is here. But they are not meeting their side yard setbacks. Our client has spoken with both of those neighbors, and they have not expressed any concern with the side yard. In fact, they haven't expressed any concern with the front yard either at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. For me personally, I'm looking at the opinion of the next door neighbors is very important, but that it's not sort of dispositive of the entire issue. So, board members, any questions or comments? Okay, I don't have anyone else sign up to speak, but we did get some protests. Is there anyone here that was hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? Okay. Board members? Take everyone's temperature.
I'm okay with it.
Keep staring at that monster house in the bottom right corner.
Yeah, I was concerned about overbuilding, but
It's definitely overbuilt there.
but based on the renderings today, you know, I mean, I'm personally not very supportive of the side yard setbacks. I can get behind the front, but the side for me, I mean, just because the neighbors also encroach, now the proposed properties also going to encroach, which sort of amplifies any issue that there was with the side yard setback potentially. So that one, I don't know that I'm totally on board with, but I'm also only one board member, so.
It's a variance on the platted line, not the required
Right.
code. All right, okay.
I guess as to the side yard for me, I'm kind of struggling to get to the necessity point. I mean, the front makes sense to me to try to be in line with all the rest of the properties, but as far as the side, that seems, the necessity, I mean, I could get on board with it, but I see what you're saying. I mean, just because the others do doesn't mean this one should.
Well, if I may, I think what it gets to is other new homes in this neighborhood have been afforded the opportunity to maximize their land and the value of their property, and we're seeking that same allowance that other neighbors have enjoyed, that this particular lot, just per the plat, would not be permitted. So again, we're meeting the fire code, we're meeting the zoning regulations. If this was platted today, you probably would not see a 10-foot side yard setback. You know, the only other relief we could have sought would be to rezone this into an SPUD, which I don't think is the appropriate route for this property. We have the zoning we need. It's a single-family home in a single-family neighborhood. It just so happened that there were platted setbacks that had not been adhered to for much of the neighborhood.
Well, I'll tell you kind of where I am personally. I understand your point, and you may very well be able to get everything that you want in front of the planning commission. I don't know. Given the protests that we have, I know your response to, I've heard your response to the protest, but without having them here to sort of confirm that there was sort of a misunderstanding with some OG&E flags or something, all I have to go off is a lot of the neighbors protesting this application without the clarity of them maybe not actually protesting the application and confirming that it was misunderstanding. So, I mean, for me, I think you've established the conditions for the front yard setback, but not the side. That's just where I am. If you would want to potentially, if it's important enough to you to get that side yard setback, if you could address some of these concerns and clarify these issues with the protests at our next meeting, you could request a continuance. Or if you can get 3 board members, they can sort of override my concerns and we can proceed today, but that's kind of where I am personally.
So as you know, it's extremely difficult to get people to show up when they don't object to something. Getting a supporter here to take time out of the middle of the day is extremely difficult. And so I understand your point that there is a petition that has not been withdrawn. But I think the fact that you had that many signatures on a petition the day of the hearing, no one shows up, I think helps me feel that we did the due diligence, we met with them, and that they are no longer concerned. In one of the phone calls I had, the side yard setbacks were not even the issue, it was the front yard and maintaining that visual line down Somerset. There have been another variance granted in the neighborhood, specifically for side yard setbacks. We feel it's appropriate. You know, the house isn't designed, but they have a style that they're going with, and the style that they have requires them to maximize the width of the property. And again, our neighbor has it. That was the neighbor that withdrew his signature on the petition. We're meeting fire code and we're meeting the zoning code. So we feel that we're attempting to maximize the property in the same way others have, and that's part of the hardship here. And we feel we've proven that, and we would ask for your approval on the side yard today as well.
Okay. I'd personally like some clarification from the protests before my mind would be changed on that point. But board members, do you have a motion, questions, comments?
We know where that 2541 Somerset Place is. That was,
Is this the one that said that it was
said it was
denied?
declined, yeah, one of our.
I tried to look it up, but I didn't see
That's
where we declined that. I mean, the search features, sometimes cases fall through the cracks on that, but I didn't see where we denied that one.
Was that a side or?
It just says a setback request
Setback
or a
denied.
variance request was denied.
If I may, the one in the protest letter,
Yeah.
that request was for 2 variances, for front yard and for side yards. The front yard was denied, but my understanding that the side yards were approved in that scenario. I think it was also
The corner lot too, right?
right.
Yeah.
And so there were different facts of the case that were at play there that led the board to deny the front yard. But it is my understanding that the side yard, per Ms. Ramsey, was approved.
Any other questions, comments, or a motion? Well, I cannot make a motion, so if anyone would like to make a motion. Well, we'll see what motions we get.
Yeah, I mean, I'll move approval of case number, sorry, I'm trying to find, 15006, is it?
It's 8.
Is it 8?
They're not in order, so I think it's 8.
Okay. 15008 for the reasons that it meets the statutory conditions for the variance requested.
And this is for both of them?
Yes, for the side and front. And do I need to state the precise numbers? Or okay,
As stated in the application.
as stated in the application.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve both variance requests in case 1 5008 for the reason that they meet the statutory conditions for variances. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Okay, item 5, case 14999, special exception of Noble Warren to allow home sharing at 633 Northwest 117th Street.
Sure. Can we,
Ordinarily, to go for a variance, you have to apply for a permit and be turned down. And then if you get the variance, you have to wait 10 days. But since we already have a permit, can we go ahead and forward the driveway?
I think you still have to wait for the 10-day. The variance is not operative until that 10-day window expires. So you will have to wait. Okay.
Appeal purposes.
Right. Oh. Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. You could just introduce yourself, and something I didn't mention in my comments, but for the speakers today, if you could introduce yourself by name and address, and then give us a brief overview.
I'm Rebecca Robertson with Milk and Honey Realty on behalf of the applicant, Noble Warren. And we are just trying to get him approved for a short-term rental.
Yeah, can you just give us... There it is. You could just give us a brief overview of sort of the property and how many rooms and that kind of thing.
Sure. It's, I believe, about 1,700 square feet. It's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath. Mr. Warren has done some upgrades to it, so he would be better to speak on what all has been done on the property. We have a property management agreement. Oh, I'm so sorry. We have a property management agreement. We will handle everything for him to make sure that there's no nuisance and problems with the neighbors in the neighborhood and the community. I don't know what all you would request of me. We do have security cameras that will be in place, and we do ask for government IDs, and we have set forth our mandatory rules in our agreements for them to abide by. So hopefully none of my tenants will be bad.
Sure. No, and I think it's pretty rare that folks have problems, so that's been good so far. The thing that I think helps your application probably the most is there are not a lot of other home sharing properties near this location.
Correct.
So that, I think, helps your application. The 10, well, maybe not. If it's a 4-bedroom. The 10 people seemed a little high, but it's 4 bedrooms, so.
Yeah.
Are there multiple, like, bunk beds in there, or? That still
There'll
seems
be
very high for 4.
So there's the 4 bedrooms. He was discussing, there'll be a king-size bed, queen size to allow for 2 people, the bunk beds, and then there'll also be the sleeper couches if there should be. We'll be able to house that many people. I personally, as property management, do not want that many people in there so it will be allowed to house that many, but I don't see that in my realm happening.
Were there any protests to this one?
I didn't see any with this one. There might be some people here today, but I didn't see any. The other thing with 10 people is, if we were closer to downtown, I think we'd be worried about a party house or something, but close to Memorial, probably not as big of a concern. Any other questions or comments, board members? Does anyone, I don't have anyone signed up, but was anyone else hoping to speak on this application?
Mr. Warren is here if you would like to hear from him, but.
I don't think so. I think you've done a good job, and the application had a lot of the information that we were looking for, and it looked like off-street parking was available as well, although this area has wider streets. So, board members, questions, comments, or a motion? Well, period of time, but
3 years is what I would, given the location, 3
Okay.
is what I was thinking.
yeah, I think I'd agree with that. Okay, sounds like a motion.
I move approval, 3 years, including the advertising, the self-imposed rules, and,
I'm sorry.
okay. I move approval for a term of 3 years,
3.
include in your advertising the self-imposed rules that
Okay.
you listed in the application, and include no on-street parking.
No on-street parking?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
And I'll move approval. Did I catch everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
About 4 of those nurses are gonna be looking for a spot to park though, I think.
I'll second.
We've got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 14999 for a period of 3 years for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception, on the condition that it be advertised as off-street parking only and include the self-imposed conditions as stated in the application. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Item 6, case 15,005, special exception of Lucas Richardson for home sharing at 2305 Northwest 16th Street.
Lucas Richardson, 5117 Isle Bridge Court, and applying today for home sharing special exception. This is a quadplex right off 16th and Youngs. One of the units, they're all almost 1,400 square feet, 2 bed, 1 bath, and just applying for one of the units. Sleep 6 people, 2 bedrooms, queen in each room, and then a pull-out couch. Do have adequate parking. There'll be 10 spaces total in the parking pad. Just needs to be cleaned up, as you can see. But any questions?
So just for clarity's sake, it's a quadplex and one of the units will
Yeah.
be available?
The other 3 will be long-term rentals.
Okay.
Oh, that makes sense.
And one? Okay, so, okay, I think I
That'd
understand.
be
now,
Unit
but-
D.
But, so quadplex and the one unit has 2 beds? Two
It's
bedrooms?
2 bedroom. Yeah, they're all 2-bedroom
Okay.
units. Each one of them about 1,400 square feet.
Okay. And are those other 3 units leased out right now?
They're not, no, it's currently being remodeled.
Okay.
Just paint, tile.
Okay. Is there a special exception on the other units?
No.
Okay. There's another one in this area.
What's that?
There was another one in this area in the past that we had, that it was a quadplex or an octoplex or something that,
No, not me.
they tried to get a few special exceptions. I think we declined a couple of those. Board members, any questions or comments?
Just out of curiosity, are your long-term rentals going to be aware of this
Yes.
short-term rental?
Yeah, I don't want to take the chance of getting complaints. I have 2 other Airbnbs, both duplexes, have long-term tenant in each side, and both of them moved in after the Airbnb, was already established, and made them well aware. Last thing I want to do is get angry calls about, people coming in being too loud and having issues.
Do you plan on applying for special exceptions for any of the others?
No, just coming up here in the past, I know you all like to kind of spread it out on a duplex, don't want each side being a long-term, so it was just going to be one of these and that's it.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. I don't have anyone else signed up to speak. Is there anyone that was hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? Okay. Hearing none. Questions, comments, or motion?
Yours, I guess, many years.
I
He's
think-
requesting 3 in the application.
I think for this area, we've been doing 2 or
Like 2,
less.
Yeah.
Just, it's getting really dense.
Yeah, so with that, I'd move approval of case number 15005 for a period of 2 years with the conditions listed in the application. So your unit would be advertised that way.
Yes.
And, I would be comfortable with putting in a condition that this would be the only one in that quadplex, if we can do that, that there wouldn't be others approved in that quadplex.
And they're different addresses, right? A, B, and C, I would assume.
I don't know that, this is a question for the municipal counselor, but I don't know that, we could signal to him that he would have an uphill battle approving anymore, but I don't know that we could condition approval of this one as being the only one in a quadplex. Sorry to put you on the spot with
Oh, no,
a
that's
dense legal
fine.
question, but
No, that's fine. The idea is that you don't want to have too much density with the home sharing, so you could do as you have done, which is to suggest that that would not be well received, but then you would consider each application as it came in.
Separately.
And you would have the map. So that could be a consideration as it comes up, but not related to this one, because he's not asking for it.
And that's
with this
fine,
one.
I'll remove that from my motion, but for the reason I ask is because I don't feel like, like we didn't know that there weren't any others in this quadplex that had already been approved or requested. And so we can see a dot on a map, but not the specifics, and where our concern is turning us into a hotel, right? You know that, you've been here before, so.
Well, maybe
anyway.
we can do that as part of the staff report, say
Yeah.
whether there are some others in the area, and rather than the map, maybe give you addresses
Or
or
particularly
something.
with the same address, just a different unit number. I mean, that's kind of the big concern here. Anyhow, let me just restate my motion. I move approval of case number 15005 for a period of 2 years on the condition that your advertisement would list the conditions that you've listed in your application.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 15005 for the reason it meets statutory conditions for special exception for a period of 2 years, and including a condition that it'll be advertised with the self-imposed conditions in the application. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
Item 7, case 15,003, application by same applicant for home sharing at 1442 Northwest 41st.
Luke Richardson, 5117 Isle Bridge Court. This is just over 1,000 square foot, single-family home, 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, has a driveway that can hold 3 cars, and just applying for the, I think you put 3 years special exception on the home sharing on this property.
The 5 rooms, 6 guests just seems low, but I was just wondering why.
Yeah, I mean, I have 3 children, wife and I, so when we go out of town, travel, it could be, if you're limited to 4, you got that third wheel, makes things a little difficult, so it just opens up that option. On my other Airbnbs that hold 4 guests each, rarely do I have that many on the smaller units. It just, if it is, it's usually children.
I might have missed this, but your question sparked another question, but I thought I heard you say 1,000 square feet
Yeah, it's, I believe, 1,050
was
square feet.
5 bedrooms.
2 bedroom, 5 rooms total.
Oh, 5 rooms,
Rooms.
not
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear.
bedrooms. Okay, I was like, that,
No, yeah, it'll be
I just wanted to go
Same.
visit that.
I'm like,
multiple levels, very small rooms.
Dining rooms. They all live in pantries.
But yeah, each bedroom will have a queen bed and then a pull-out couch in the living.
Okay. Board members, any other questions or comments? And this one, I mean, they do have narrow streets, so I would definitely want to off-street parking only, but that's been proposed in the application, so that shouldn't be a problem. Is anyone hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? Okay. Questions, comments, or a motion?
I don't think we discussed length of time, but I'll go with my gut and say 2 years. Move approval of case number 15003 on the conditions that it meets requirements for the special exception for a period, and utilize or and memorializing the house rules in the application for a period of 2 years.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 15003 for a period of 3 years.
Two.
Sorry,
Well,
2 years.
Motion was 2. but
Yeah, I kept seeing 3. This is 15003.
I can change it to 3 if you want to.
The second was on 2 years. He would probably like 3 years, but second one, the motion was for 2 years, so we'll go with that. For the reason it meets statutory conditions for a special exception, on the condition that it'll be advertised with the self-imposed condition stated in the application. Once you're able to, cast your votes.
But I vote yes.
Okay, by voice vote, if that's okay.
Yeah, I don't. Yep.
You seconded somehow.
There it is.
I still vote yes.
Unless Paula did.
And it's approved.
Okay, item 8, case 15,004, special exception of Amber Gilliland to allow home sharing at 2035 Northwest 16th Street.
Hello, I'm Amber Goolilot, and I own the property 2035 Northwest 16th Street. It is an 1,808 square foot property, 3-bed, 2-bath. We are looking to apply for a short-term rental home sharing special exception. It is recently renovated property. Off-street parking only. We could fit 6 cars on the parking area. And this is actually a photo before it's been renovated this past year. We're looking to provide lodging for up to 8 people. Anything else you would like to know about the property?
Could you go back to that image of the property? It's like a duplex?
So it was previously a duplex. Before we bought it, it was turned into a single-family home. So, yeah.
And how many rooms?
3-bed, 2-bath, 2 living areas, and 1 kitchen.
Oh, okay.
The recent renovations include updated plumbing, updated electrical. We have a 2-car garage. We also have our contractor here if you have any specific questions about the property and the renovations that we've done on it.
I don't know that I had any questions. Board members, any questions of the applicant?
I know we had a protest. If they were here, I'd like to hear from them for sure.
Did you, I guess I can give you the first opportunity. Did you want to address the protest? Or did you receive the protest?
We did not receive any protests.
Okay.
We've talked with our direct neighbors. They all were aware that we're looking to renovate this property and turn it into home sharing. So
I'll give you the comments, but they just are concerned with the resale value of surrounding homes and the idea of multiple sort of unknown renters coming and going from the neighborhood. So, yeah. And we see those concerns a lot of times in these cases. So, yeah, I don't know if you want to address those or
I understand those concerns as well. With this property and where it is located, right next to this fire station on 16th and Penn, it is a little bit of a higher traffic area anyway. I don't know that it's going to cause much more traffic than there already is. And we have a fairly large lot and separation between us and the next door neighbor. So with the updates that we've done to the driveway and the 2-car parking garage, we even have space behind the garage, So I don't foresee that traffic in and out being a disruption. Again, no on-street parking or anything. So I know there is other home sharing in this area. It is just a high traffic area in general, being close to the plaza.
Yeah, and you touched on one of the points that we have to consider based on what City Council has told us to consider, which is whether the proposed use would be in excess of what an otherwise permitted use would be. And here, I think traditionally being a duplex, I was a little surprised that it was only 3 bedrooms, honestly, as a duplex. I thought it might be more than that. But in any event, I think as a duplex, there would be even more traffic than your proposed use would have. So with that, any other questions or comments of the applicant? Okay. I don't have anyone signed up to speak, but was anyone else hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? Okay. Oh, I think we've got, yeah. And then, ma'am, if you can sit down and we'll call you back up afterward.
I'm her husband, so
Oh,
I don't know
okay.
if that makes any difference.
Sometimes people, get into a battle up there, so we like to.
No, I am for it, so I just wanted to
Okay.
pass.
Okay.
So whatever thing will help it to pass. I think you asked about property value diminished as a result of having the Airbnb or short-term rentals.
Yeah.
That's actually not true because we have invested quite a bit, and it will increase the value of the neighborhood dramatically, actually.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point that I think is true in a lot of these cases where people will come in and renovate an otherwise dilapidated home, and it actually can increase the home values and the surrounding as a result, rather than just the person not, renovating the property or something. So I agree with you in some cases, and this is probably one of those cases where it actually might increase. The other thing is, if you look sort of at the data internationally, a lot of times home sharing has the opposite problem that people think. People think that it'll devalue the neighboring properties, but a lot of times it actually inflates the property values too much so that it prices out people from certain areas because people can make more money home sharing. And so people renovate home sharing, and now people get priced out of this area that they otherwise were able to afford. So a lot of times it has the opposite problem. I'm not saying that's happening here, but it's something that we're keeping an eye on. So.
Yeah, and we don't live far away from there too, so.
And you'll be managing the property, you guys?
Yes.
Okay.
We literally live close to it too. We don't live far away from it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you sure you don't want to protest? I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Okay, board members, any questions or comments? Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And then anyone else hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? Okay, I think we can take a motion.
Maybe 2 years?
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. In that case, I'll move approval, advertise your self-imposed rules, advertise no on-street parking for 2 years.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 15004 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 2 years and including the self-imposed conditions stated in the application. Once you're able to, cast your votes. Ms. Ybarra, apparently yours didn't go through or something. Oh, okay. And it's approved. Thank you.
Item 9, case 15,007, special exception of Stacia Rinaldo for a home sharing at 2841 Northwest 17th Street.
Hi, I'm Stacia Rinaldo. We're seeking the special exception for home sharing for 2841 Northwest 17th Street. There will be 3 bedrooms accommodating 8 guests. As you can see, we've got some pretty strict conduct or rules of conduct for our guests there. Also, I noticed, and I don't know if anybody else put the pictures of the on-street parking. We have quite a bit of parking on the property as well, so they don't have to park on the street. We have completely renovated the inside cosmetically of the property. So yeah, what other questions do you guys have?
You mentioned the parking issue. Sometimes, especially if the property can accommodate parking, we just ask that folks advertise as off-street parking only. Is that a problem for you? It seemed like with 3 rooms, that wouldn't be a problem, but.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
I'll maybe rephrase it. So with 3 rooms, I don't know that gonna have that many cars anyway.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of times we ask for people to put in their advertising that it's off-street parking only.
Off-street parking only?
Yeah, off-street, so they cannot park on the street. Would that be,
You
that doesn't
mean-
sound like it'd be a problem.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, they can
I
only
was
park.
like, on the street? Okay. No,
That
that won't
happens.
be a problem. Yeah.
It happens a lot.
Yeah, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, only parking in the driveway, basically. And that doesn't seem like
Okay.
it'd be a problem, but.
I just think that contradicts a little bit with the statement, no more than 4 cars in the driveway.
I
So
saw that,
To
but
remove that and put no off-street parking only.
Okay, okay.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. And with 8 people total, I think, 4 cars would be the
I'll just
maximum
state
anyway.
this for the record, for the board, this area is, this is like the 3rd one in this area today alone. This area is starting to get really congested.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've been, and we could stay afterward and talk about sort of options there, but I think this does need to get revisited by city council. But for our purposes today, we only have so many tools, so. Unless there's, we can certainly start being even more critical with these, or doing even shorter amounts of time, so. Whatever the board wants to do. Any questions or comments? Okay. Is anyone else hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? Okay, seeing none. I think we can take questions, comments, or a motion.
I'm okay with this one. I'm okay with this one for 2 years. So I'll move approval for 2 years, advertise the self-imposed rules and no on-street parking.
Okay.
Second? Okay. The motion is second to approve the special exception in case 15007 for the reason it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 2 years on the condition, the self-imposed conditions included in the application, and it'll be advertised as off-street parking only. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 10, case 15,001, special exception of Urban Rise Realty to allow home sharing at 1712 Spoke Street.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeremy Johnson. I'm co-owner of the property at 1712 Spoke Street, and we are applying for short-term rental exemption. The property is it's a mixed-use commercial and residential property. The bottom floor is a commercial area, about 600 square feet, and then the top 2 floors are residential. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, queen in each bedroom, as well as an air mattress to sleep in the living room.
And this will be the entire, those 2 levels, I assume? Because they're pretty
Yeah,
skinny.
there's a separate entrance. The commercial property has a separate entrance in the residential.
Okay. And then this Urban Rise Realty, is this just for this property, or is that a?
We have another Airbnb in the Capital District that's been going for a couple years and has done well. No problems with that one.
Okay. Board members, questions or comments?
Second in Wheeler District will be coming more, sure.
Is this, oh, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is actually in the commercial street of Wheeler District, so
Yeah.
I think
This
that's
is the
probably
first
good
one
for
I
some of
remember.
the commercial tenants.
Yeah, this is the first one I've seen like this.
Yeah, the other one was separate, kind of on the residential side, but, the developments are very different for Oklahoma.
And this is, I'm reluctant to say this, but like sort of what I envisioned with home sharing, where you kind of have scattered around and different types of properties and things like this. This is kind of what I had in mind, or I think City Council had in mind. Obviously, we can't have all of Wheeler District becoming home sharing, but a couple here and there I think are consistent with what the City Council passed. It looks like there is parking for 1 space.
Yes, the one designated spot for the Airbnb guests, and then there's additional kind of parking lot parking for extra people there. They don't really like parking on the streets at all, but there are parking places.
So they'll be able to use the parking lot area?
Yeah, the guests will use the, that parking lot right there.
Any questions or comments, board members? I don't know if I asked this yet, but is anyone else hoping to speak on this application? Okay. Hearing none. Questions, comments, or a motion?
Move approval of case number 15001 for the reasons that it meets the statutory conditions for the special exception for a period of 2 years, and your advertisements to include the rules that you put in your application for your renters.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 15001 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for special exception for a period of 2 years and including the self-imposed conditions stated in the application. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 11, case 15,009, special exception to allow home sharing at 3625 Northwest 18th Street.
Good afternoon. My name is Helen Embao, and I'm also here applying for a home sharing application so I could be able to rent short-term for guests because I do not, the home is not my primary residence.
I think this is one that you said you've remodeled. You've remodeled this one or done some?
Yes,
yeah.
yes, I did. Sorry.
And I'm familiar with that area, so I'm pretty supportive of people remodeling homes in that area.
Yeah.
And you're a little bit west of some of the clusters of Airbnbs, so that helps your application. Board members, any questions or comments? And if I recall this street correctly, they are kind of pretty narrow streets, and so would you be able to do, it looks like you could do off-street parking, so no parking on the street?
Yeah, usually we expect them to use the parking,
The driveway?
the driveways for parking. And because both homes, I'm applying for both homes to do home sharing. So I did kind of separate the driveway because it has a single driveway. That way we don't have any issues with parking for guests renting either homes.
Right. And then I guess that raises the other issue for the board is the same property next door is being requested. So I don't know how the board how the board feels about this, but I know in the past we've told people to pick one or the other property, but not both when they're right next door to each other.
Okay. And may I also say this? Next to the brick home, there is a clinic, health wash clinic. We own it, so we have plenty of parking there also. So if we encourage the guests to park there if they have more cars.
And yeah, cars aren't really the issue for me. And again, now I'm sort of shifting gears and considering your next application as well. But you're asking for home sharing on two properties that are right next to each other.
Yes, sir.
And I don't know that we've approved that before. We might, I don't know that we have. I know we've denied that before.
Okay.
And I don't know how much of these proceedings you have watched in the past, but one of the things that we think City Council was trying to prevent against is essentially turning neighborhoods into all home sharing, or having one street being all home sharing, because that basically becomes like a hotel instead of a neighborhood. And so we kind of guard against that. I don't know how the board feels about this particular application or whether there's something unique about this, but I did want to give you the benefit of those comments.
Yeah, we also did that because sometimes we have families, large families, needing a place to live, and sometimes they have to move to different locations. So if they could have a place for all of them to be together, that could be an advantage for them.
I understand. I understand. I don't know. How does the board feel about this one?
Well, last time I think we settled on 3 in one area and dropped 1, so.
That were next to each other with the same?
Yeah.
I don't remember that's the meeting I missed, so I don't
Well,
know.
yeah, you were at the first one when he came with the 4, and then he came back with the.
All right next to each other?
Not
Across the street.
Not right, like on a corner, kind of.
It was the same street. One was here, one's adjacent across the street, and then one's down the block a little bit with the same applicant. And then you had another one that was next door, and I think maybe that's the one that we said we're not doing next door.
Right.
And I think we had an apartment complex ask for 4 on the same hall.
And we did maybe 2 or something.
We did 2 or 3, but
I think.
yeah.
I mean, there's not much else on this street, so, I mean, that's sort of in her favor, but, I mean, I'll give you my first reaction. My first reaction was to have the applicant pick one or the other, but not both. So, and if they were spread out a little bit, one was down the street a little bit, I'd be a little bit more open to it, but being right next to each other, I wasn't really
My
comfortable.
concern, again, is, we might define clusters differently, you and I, Mr. Chairman, but I mean, I'm looking at this map, and I mean, it seems like this area is also getting congested as well. I'm assuming this is just the blowout of this little area, correct?
Yeah,
I
I think, but this is on the other side of the highway also, so you've got a kind of natural divider between that other group of home sharing properties.
I was looking at the black dots, and I'm like, there's a lot. So,
Sure.
yeah, so I mean, my inclination would be to choose one or the other, and not have both of these being short-term rentals. Maybe one being long-term or whatever it is that you want to do with that. I feel like,
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Is anyone else hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? Okay. Hearing none. It sounds like you've got, I'll just kind of tell you where you are. It sounds like you've got 2 board members that are supportive of one of your applications, but not both. And then I don't know where the other 2 are. And we have 1 board member that's missing. And I don't know where she would stand on this. And so you can sort of choose what to do here if you wanted to, if there's one that you think is maybe more valuable to you or something.
Well, there's one that's currently, I've operated that home sharing for almost 2 years, the brick house, 3629. But that's not the case number we are discussing at this point.
Okay. Well, out of these 2, I mean, I think at most we would continue one of them. But is there one that you would want to get, or that's more important to you today?
Well, like I said, the 3629, it's currently booking for home sharing because it's been, before the new law, it had been operating, because they just passed a law that we should have a home sharing permit.
I don't know that,
operating.
I mean, she shouldn't be here if she's grandfathered in. She's saying that this 3629 has been operating for the ordinance, so I think that's grandfathered in forever, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so that might be it. And normally, if you're grandfathered in, if you were renting this before, you're doing home sharing before the ordinance passed, you don't need a special exception. But if there's a break in you using it for home sharing, then you would not be grandfathered in. So that sounds like probably why you're here. Well, is that the one that you would want to move forward on today and then maybe continue the other one? Or I leave it up to you. But.
Well, I mean, we can, the 3625 maybe. which is
This application.
The first one?
yeah, the one that with the case number 15009.
So that's the one you prefer to go forward with today?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we'll, I guess, continue the other one. I don't know if you guys want to just vote on that or wait for Ms. Asbury or what, but
I think that would be up to you. Do you want to continue the second one, or do you want us to vote on the, I mean, she'd have to,
I mean, we can continue it, but
How long can we continue it? I hate for her to waste her money on the filing fee.
I don't know when Ms. Asbury will be back, but I assume the next meeting. She's here quite a bit, so. Yeah. I don't even know if she'll support it, though. She might not, I don't know, but it's the only shot that the applicant has, so. Okay, well, I think we can proceed if anyone has a motion on the first application.
I'll move approval of case number 15009 for the reasons that it meets the statutory conditions of the special exception for a period of 2 years. Did you have rules in here? Yeah, and you'll advertise your property with the rules that you have listed here, and be sure to include no on-street parking in your rules for your
Yes, ma'am.
advertisement.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 15009 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 2 years, including the self-imposed conditions in the application, and on the condition that it'll be advertised as off-street parking only. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you so much.
No problem. And then the second one, I think we'll go ahead and continue to the next meeting, which I assume, I know we've got a new meeting schedule here, but
I'll make a motion that we continue case number 15010 to the,
I assume we're going to approve the new meeting schedule that's at the end of the agenda today, which would be March 31st would be our next meeting.
March 31st, 2022 meeting.
Okay. Is that okay with you?
We have a
March
meeting on
30.
the 17th.
Sure.
Oh,
Got one 17th.
I'm skipping a meeting, so the 17th.
Oh, March 17th, 2022.
March 17th.
Yes.
We don't even have one on the 31st.
Will they send it later and the time?
I'm sorry?
Will they send it later to me and the time of?
Will she get
I don't
notice?
receive anything else.
Okay, apparently not, so maybe take down some notes. But yeah, March 17th at the same time in the same place
Thank you.
for this other application. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we've got a motion, do we have a second? Okay, to continue the application in case 15010 to the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Adjustment, which is March 17th, 2022. Cast your votes. And that item's continued.
Next item is 13, case 14998, request of Lamar Central Outdoor for an appeal of administrative decision at 2445 Northwest 39th Street. Got enough?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to begin and to kind of narrow down the potential issues today, and feel free to take it wherever you want, but I'll sort of give you the landscape where I think we are, which is the board's jurisdiction to hear appeals, and we can hear appeals from the final decisions of city officials. And so if we can focus in on what city official decision we're talking about and what's wrong with that city official's decision. I know there's a lot of discussion about the district court case, and maybe that's relevant to what's before us, but I did want to kind of narrow down the parameters of what we're dealing with here today. So.
Good afternoon. My name is Bill Hickman, 330 West Gray Street, Norman, Oklahoma. I'm a lawyer and I represent Lamar Outdoor Advertising here today. And Mr. Chairman, to your point, we have appealed the administrative decision regarding the issuance of the sign permit on the subject property that we will be discussing today. And in your rules, appeal from the decision of the director. It says the director or his or her designee is responsible for the enforcement of the development regulations of the zoning code. Any decision of the director may be appealed to the board by persons affected by the decision. So that's what my client is doing today. They are affected by the decision to issue the sign permit that was supposed to be followed pursuant to enforcement of the development code, the sign code, and the other codes of the city of Oklahoma City. So I've given you have some slides. We have some technical difficulties of getting it loaded up to the screen. So I will walk you through the slides and refer to the page number in the bottom right-hand corner, as a brief kind of explanation. Slide number 2 gives you a brief overview of the basis for Lamar's application for this appeal from the administrative decision. We filed it back in January based on the unlawful issuance of the sign permit for an oversized digital billboard on property zoned C3, which does not allow billboards on developed C3 property and limits the size of those billboards to 300 square feet. So the digital billboard requested is not in conformance with state law, city ordinances, as well as the city's long-term plan. And the city has attempted or purports to attempt to have rezoned the property to SPUD 1134 to allow the digital billboard based on a journal entry of judgment. And I'll explain to you why that's important here in a minute. And the administrative decision to issue that sign permit relies on the zoning of the property, rezoning of the property, which is done by the SPUD 1134 and the journal entry of judgment. And I mentioned those 2 points on the journal entry of judgment because it's actually referenced on the sign permit approval per the judgment, referring to the journal entry of judgment. So it is a part of the administrative official's decision to issue this sign permit that we are appealing is that journal entry of judgment. That was the basis upon which that official issued the sign permit that is the basis of this appeal from that decision. If you look over on slide 3, we provide a brief factual background. The property is less than 1 acre site fronting along Interstate 44. The property is zoned C3 prior to this SPUD issue. And then on June 11, 2019, the applicant, the property owner, applied to rezone the property to SPUD 1134. And the basis of that rezoning application was simply to leave the C3 zoning in place, but to add a digital billboard as a permitted use on C3 property, not only to allow a digital billboard, but to allow one that's 672 square feet, which exceeds by twice the allowable footage, 300 square feet, is what's allowed on C3 property. And it's already a developed property, as you can see from the pictures and what's in your packet. There's already a building on it. And billboards are not allowed on developed C3 property. Flip over to slide 4. You'll see there's a couple slides here about Lamar standing, and that's, I know, a little bit of a legal term, but I can call that also why Lamar can come before you and make this argument as an aggrieved person. I know you've received some information from the LCO attorney.
I
So
think
wanted to briefly.
I can maybe save you some time there, at least from my perspective. I don't know that we have to make a determination on your standing at this proceeding. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But in this case, I don't think that we have to make a ruling on your standing. And I think we can sort of assume that you have standing and then get to the merits of the appeal. And then if we, for whatever reason, that process doesn't work and we need to resort to talking about standing, we can do it at that point. But I think we can address the merits of the appeal, and then if we have to, we can address standing, but I don't think we need to do that in this case.
If you want to flip on over to slide 5, I'll just briefly mention on slide 5, it's a moot issue anyway, because there's 2 other pending lawsuits between Lamar and the city of Oklahoma City involving, I think, 4, 5, 6 other SPUD and PUD cases, of which the city has sought motions to dismiss. One case was dismissed, went up on appeal. And slide 5 is the ruling from the Court of Appeals saying, no, Lamar does have standing to appeal these types of issues because they are, as they have pled, negatively impacted and affects the value of their interest in property in proximity to these zoning cases and the issuance of these sign permits. And as I've highlighted here, the quote is that because the Supreme Court has held that a party is deemed to be aggrieved for purposes of the issue of standing by competition resulting from an unlawful action of a government agency. And that's exactly what Lamar has alleged in this appeal to your body, as well as in the 2 pending lawsuits involving the city. And it was affirmed by the Court of Appeals that we can make these arguments because if the city has engaged in unlawful practices and not follow their own ordinances or the laws and have issued permits or have rezoned property and it's negatively affected the interest and the property interests of my client, then we have standing to make those arguments and to seek to cure those wrongs. Okay, slide 6. So the next series of slides kind of gives you the context of the case based on the staff report for this SPUD when it was initially presented. And so slide 6 talks about a few little excerpts that I'm not going to read to you because I'll talk about them in a little more detail on the next page, but are little excerpts from the staff report of the problems that the staff raised and mitigation factors they recommended that the applicant take in order to have this SPUD approved back in August of 2019. And if you look at slide 7, one of those recommend approvals of the application subject to certain technical evaluations, which was to address the operational impacts, because this sign would be next to residential property by reducing the sign height, the sign square footage, the brightness, and/or limiting the display to the east-facing side. And one of the other mitigating factors was to not approve it at all and not allow the billboard sign at all. And if you look at the bottom of the page, plan conformance considerations, this is really important because it's also one of the legal issues in this case. Plan conformance considerations relate to compliance with the city's long-term comprehensive plan and Plan OKC. And the quote from the staff report, the SPUD is requested for a C3 zone property to add a non-accessory sign use. That was the only change in the SPUD. Everything else was staying C3. The only change, and you heard the gentleman earlier say, I could do this through a SPUD and try to circumvent this body. And that's what's happening in the city of Oklahoma City right now, and I'll get to that more in a minute. The SPUD was solely used to add a billboard to a site that was otherwise not allowed. Let me say that again. A SPUD was used solely to add a billboard as a use on a site where a billboard would otherwise not be legal. And with regard to plan conformance, Plan OKC contemplates the reduction of sign clutter through future code changes and limiting the number of freestanding signs. Well, if you're rezoning property using the SPUD process for the sole purpose to add a use that's otherwise not allowed, you're not complying with what you've told the public and hundreds of thousands of dollars was spent on, which was to limit the number of freestanding signs.
But isn't that the whole purpose of a SPUD? I mean,
Pardon?
Isn't that the whole purpose of a SPUD? I mean, I'll tell you, they come in front of us with a request like that, we'd probably kick them to Planning Commission anyway. We'd probably say that's too excessive for us, and we'd kick them to Planning Commission.
Well, the part that I'm saying they're circumventing your body on is the request with a larger sign face in particular. I've stood in front of this body before asking for a larger sign face or change in the spacing between signs or the height of the sign. I'm not referring to the change in the zoning, but this is the body, in my opinion at least, that should be making decisions about should a sign be less than 1,000 feet between them? Should a sign be allowed to be taller than what's in the sign code? Should a sign be allowed to be bigger, more advertising face than what's in the sign code? This SPUD that we're talking about today, 1134, allows for a 672 square foot sign when 300 square feet is what's allowed in C3. By doing a SPUD, they also then said, oh, we want a bigger face too, 672. What they could have and probably should have done, in my opinion, was said that a use will be allowed in that SPUD, but if you want it to be bigger than what's allowed in that C3 use, 300 square feet, you got to come to this Board of Adjustment and get a variance for a larger sign. Because then they have to show why is it appropriate at that place.
How is it within our jurisdiction, and maybe you're going to get to this, but if you can help make the connection in my mind, how is it in this board's jurisdiction to address that issue on whether the Planning Commission exceeded its authority or unlawfully approved this sign permit, or not the sign permit, the rezoning? I mean, I've never, not only have I never had it happen before, I've never even heard of a Planning Commission case going through and then even getting confirmed at City Council and then coming back to the Board of Adjustment, and the Board of Adjustment says, no, wait a minute, that's supposed to be our issue.
Mr. Chairman, I don't disagree with you. The honest answer is I've never seen a sign permit issued by the City of Oklahoma City where on the approval it says, per the judgment. And so your administrative official relied upon a judgment that was the settlement that approved this SPUD as the basis for approving their sign permit. And because that was the basis of his decision or her decision as the administrative official to issue the sign permit, That's why I'm talking about it before you today.
Okay.
But otherwise, a court judgment may or may not be relevant to this body. Unfortunately, in this instance, it's clearly on the face of the approval of the sign permit per the judgment. Now, why that official did that, I assume because they were told or advised to do that. And I do talk about that in my presentation a little bit more in a minute.
Okay, I'll wait for that part.
Then on slide 8, also talking about the staff report, and I'm pointing these out to you as issues that you're aware of what was going on at the time. In the site design consideration, it clearly says it's unclear what use would be developed on the site. The existing building and/or building footprint remains the same with an added billboard. So this clearly shows you that this already has a building on this site, and all they're wanting to do is to add a billboard. On slide 9, it talks about operational impacts. And the bottom section, the last sentence, talks about potential impacts related to the spill light are triggered by the addition of a 50-foot tall sign operating at an EMD level 1 facing residential. That's a digital billboard, 50 feet tall, facing towards residential properties. Under the new sign code and the new ordinances that's being considered and going through the process right now, there would be a 300-foot spacing required from residential property. This one's approximately 150 square feet, or 150 feet away from residential property. So not only is it very close to residential property for a digital billboard, it certainly wouldn't be compliant with what the city is considering and intends to move forward with, increasing the spacing from residential properties. Slide number 10. Then on November 19th, the City Council denies this SPUD request. The property owner I refer to here as 2445's application by a vote of 5-2. Lamar was present at that time and did protest this application at the time that it was presented to council. And I provide you with a couple of quotes from Councilman Cooper, who was the council member for this particular area at the time of that November 19th vote. And fundamentally, there's two main reasons why this billboard should not be allowed and why the council at the time denied it. C3 properties not allow billboards on developed property, and C3 property limits the size of billboards to 300 square feet versus 672. Slide 11, the property owner, 2445, filed a lawsuit on December 20th. The city answered on January 13th and reaffirmed its position that this was not an appropriate location for a billboard. And then on May 26th, 2020, the City Council passes a moratorium shutting down the use of SPUDs and PUDs to circumvent the sign code restrictions, and saying in particular, quote, no new applications for PUDs or SPUDs that would allow for construction of a sign over 200 square feet will be accepted. And that moratorium remains in place today while the new sign code is going through the process. Slide 12. The 2445 lawsuit, September 28, 2021, City Council approved a resolution as a settlement between the parties, agreeing to adhere to the terms of, at that time, a proposed agreed journal entry of judgment. And that resolution added language allowing the city's use of the signs displays to promote certain events. I'm going to say that one more time. The only thing the city required of the applicant was now we get to use some of your advertising for free. And guess what? Based on that one thing the city got, something of monetary value from a property owner in this town, they then approved this SPUD. All the other things that I've shown to you that were problems, spill on a residential. C3 property doesn't allow billboards on developed property. C3 property only allows 300 square feet size signs. All the other things, all the city made them do was give us free advertising. Now, I'm sorry, but to me, that's a very dangerous precedent to set in any community, that if I'm a property owner and you deny me some request that I have, and then I come and give you something of value, then you're going to approve my request. That's exactly what happened here, friends. I mean, I can't even try to sugarcoat it. The city said, you let us advertise on that sign and we'll approve it. And that's the deal that the city made. Slide 13. On October 7th, the sign company intervened into the case. On October 14th, the motion to intervene was granted, and the court filed the journal entry of judgment that was presented by the parties. And what's important to note is that the city council was to approve the amendment to SPUD 1134 to make it clear that the city got to use that sign, and I've quoted it here, by and through a regularly scheduled meeting and approve the rezoning application within 30 days of the filing of the JEJ. And so that was the journal entry judgment filed on October 14th. Slide 14. On November 3rd, the permit for the sign was applied for to the city. And then on December 15th, I emailed the city council, or the lawyers, if you will, the legal counsel for the city of Oklahoma City, asking about the requirement for the submission of the modified SPUD per the October 14th JEJ. Where was it? When was it going to be on a council agenda? Because I had concerns about open meetings and Open Records Act. Because I could now see the journal entry judgment had been filed. And we had been looking at meeting agendas to see when is the request to amend the SPUD going to go on an agenda to be voted on, so that my client could come to a public meeting and speak its piece. I never got a response. Slide 15. Whether it was coincidence or because of my email, I don't know. On December 17th, an agreed journal entry of judgment, nunc pro tunc, some fancy legal term, was filed in the court case, removing the requirement for the city to approve amending the SPUD at a public meeting. January 4th, a second amendment to the journal entry judgment was filed, changing the effective date to get it backdated to October. Neither one of those two changes ever went to the city council, but just to be clear. January 13th, we've filed a lawsuit and sought relief from this body. Slide number 16. Again, the primary change from this SPUD was the addition of the 672 square feet digital billboard on C3 zone property that otherwise would not be allowed. Again, signs are only allowed on C3 property if it's undeveloped and up to 300 square feet. The city's comprehensive plan provides in part no new sign regulations be fashioned as a part of land development ordinances to reduce clutter. They want to reduce the impact of sign pollution, reduce the visual clutter, restrict new billboards, and eliminate or reduce the number of existing billboards. The people of this city have made it clear through this comprehensive plan, and so has your prior elected leaders, that they want fewer billboard signs. That does not mean allowing billboards in places that are otherwise not allowed through a SPUD process. So SPUD 1134 is clearly inconsistent with the Plan OKC's long-term use plan, as mentioned even in the staff report. Not to mention, Oklahoma City's own ordinances, section 59-14100.2 regarding goals and objectives for the use of SPUDs, clearly says they're to be used to maintain consistency with the city's comprehensive plan and the other standards of the city. SPUDs are to be used in a manner that's consistent with the city's long-term plan. How in the world is amending SPUD 1134 to allow a billboard in a location otherwise not allowed consistent with the long-term plan that clearly says we want to reduce the number of billboards? Also, the city's ordinance, section 59-14100.3, regarding the appropriate use of SPUDs, says they are planning tools that are not to be used to circumvent policies or used in lieu of seeking variances to regulations. Again, this SPUD process was being used for the simple one reason, which was to create a place to put a billboard that otherwise was not allowed, which circumvents the sign ordinance code itself, as well as this body's power and duties to ensure that variances are obtained when they are to be obtained, such as for a larger billboard, 672 square feet, in a zoning district that only allows up to 300 square feet. The underlining zoning, even in this SPUD, was C3, and it only allows up to 300 square feet.
While we're on this topic, I mean, is this an appeal of SPUD 1134? Is that what this is?
No, this is an appeal for the wrongful issuance of a sign permit by the administrative official based on the journal entry of judgment, which amended the SPUD. If the sign permit had been issued on some other grounds, I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Chairman. I would not be talking to you about this journal entry judgment and this SPUD. But I can't control the fact that the city's own documentation authorizing the issuance of the sign permit, for which my client says was wrong, and it was filed this administrative appeal, says on the face of the document, per the judgment.
But if the permit was issued consistent with the SPUD, I don't know how the permit was issued in error. That's still an appeal of the SPUD or the journal entry, but not the permit itself. That's my problem. And so I don't know what authority we have to say that to invalidate a SPUD of all things. I think this is just an argument for district court. And I might be wrong in that, and you can convince me otherwise, but it seems like you're making an argument in front of a district judge and not the Board of Adjustment.
I understand and appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Chairman. All I can say is that in any time there is a permit issued, it's based on something. And that basis upon which it is issued or denied is then the basis for an appeal of that issuance or denial. And so, again, I'm not the one who said, put on there issued per the judgment, but because that's what's on the application and the approval, and my client believes that it was the wrongful issuance of a permit by the administrative official, we are duty bound, we feel like, to appeal that to this body, because otherwise, city attorney or somebody else would argue we didn't exhaust our administrative appeals, we didn't follow the proper process. And so, I'm obligated, in a way, to come and make this argument before your body. And the fact that it was based on the judgment, I have to argue whether that judgment is or is not appropriate. And in our opinion, we do not believe it clearly is not appropriate.
Okay. I think you had a summary, and I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think you had a last slide.
Yes, we only have 2 slides left. Slide 17, I think this is also important for you all to be aware of. My client also does not believe that the city complied with the Open Meetings Act requirements. If you look here on the August 13th City Council agenda, where this was initially discussed in executive session, you can see the agenda item there that I've quoted. You'll not see the word SPUD 1134 anywhere in that agenda item. Then on September 28th, the agenda item that was on the agenda for approval, again, you'll see SPUD 1134 nowhere on that agenda. Recent Oklahoma Supreme Court case involving the city of Norman has made it crystal clear that the Oklahoma Meetings Act is to be liberally construed in favor of the public for transparency, and the agenda is to be worded in the plain, simple language so that a person of ordinary education can know what the council is going to be discussing, or any public body for that matter. And the average person looking at this agenda would not know that they're going to be discussing an amendment to SPUD 1134, and the average person is not required to look at an agenda, go look up a legal case, and try to track down what SPUD this is and what are they doing, and try to go find a journal entry judgment. That's well beyond what the Oklahoma Meetings Act would require for an average person to do. Rather, they're to be able to look at the face of the agenda and determine, is this something I have an interest in? And in fact, that is what my client was doing, and why I emailed the city on December 15th to say, where's this been and why has this not been on an agenda? Slide 18 is the summary. Again, because the administrative decision to issue the billboard permit was approved in reliance on SPUD 1134 and the journal entry of judgment, we believe this is an appropriate place for us to come and make this argument and ask for your reversal of the administrative decision, and therefore revoke the issuance of the signed permit. By issuing the permit, the city has allowed the unlawful construction of a digital billboard that exceeds the size limits allowed on C3 property, as well as allowing a digital billboard on property that is already developed, which is not allowed on C3 property. And finally, the city's denial of SPUD 1134 and then its subsequent reversal to settle the 24405 lawsuit, with the only change being that now the city receives free advertising, evidences the arbitrary and capricious nature of the administrative decision to issue this permit, and we would ask that you reverse the administrative decision and revoke the signed permit. If you have any questions, please, I'm here to answer those.
Board members, any questions or comments?
I'd just say Plan OKC is not ordinance, and it's not, there's nothing legally binding in it. It's a It's a good plan, yes, and it's something we go by, but I wouldn't make that the end-all be-all. I'm just getting, it's hard for me, this was denied by council, right? Initially, went to court, reversed, and did it go back?
Settled in court.
Settled, right, and then, we sign off on it, because court said, do what you said, they can't do, so.
Right.
I'm
And
with
there-
you, I'm like, how are we overturning?
And there might be board members who are willing to agree with you. I understand your argument, and if the city official's action's not consistent with a lawful spud or a lawful proceeding, or there are issues with open meetings, then maybe there are board members who would say, well, I'm going to say that the city official should have rejected the permit application or something. I don't know. But for me, the other board members know I've said this a lot, but our purview is very narrow and our jurisdiction is very narrow, and the category of things that we can make decisions on is very narrow. And so I'm not sure that this is one of those things, but we haven't heard all of the arguments either. So
I just want to clarify one thing, board member, just to be clear. I didn't say that the Plan OKC was an ordinance, but I did say that Section 59-141002, which relates to goals and objectives for the use of spuds and PUDs, it does say that the use of spuds and PUDs are to maintain consistency with the city's comprehensive plan. And so the use of PUDs and spuds are to be consistent with what's in the city's comprehensive plan. And therefore, from our perspective, that did not occur. I understand what you're saying, though. The comp plan itself is not an ordinance, but there are ordinances that refer to it and say it is to be abided by.
Yeah, it's referred to a bunch.
Okay.
But, all right.
Any other questions or comments before we've got some other folks signed up to speak, so. Okay. Ms. McDevitt? Doesn't sound like it.
Okay. Laura McDevitt on behalf of the City Attorney's Office. And I would like to start off by clarifying a few things. One is that we don't currently have 2 lawsuits involving Lamar pending in district court. We have 3 because Lamar has already appealed this particular journal entry of judgment. And so this is an issue that is currently before the district court. Second of all, we would agree with the chairman's assertion that this is not really an appropriate matter for the board. This is essentially the crux of this issue is that Lamar is seeking to challenge a journal entry of judgment, which I think is beyond the scope of jurisdiction for the Board of Adjustment. And not only is it beyond the scope of Board of Adjustment and appropriate for district court, I would also submit that if Lamar feels so strongly about this particular issue, that they should have filed a motion to intervene in the original underlying lawsuit between the city and 2445 West I-44. But I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
I do know they were protesting the cases for sure.
Okay.
At the time of planning commission.
And you mentioned an appeal to the journal entry. Is that like a motion to vacate it or something, or what's the procedural posture of that?
No, they have filed a separate lawsuit with the district court with a new judge.
Okay. And I guess sort of one of the comments that you mentioned with the board's authority and the board's power, and something I'm concerned with is the decision we make here is appealable, right? And so if we say that the city official, they should have rejected that sign permit, then someone can appeal that. And so I'm cognizant of the record in this case as well, and want to make sure that we get everything right. Any questions or comments, Ms. McDevitt? Okay, thank you. Mr. Work?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Kelly Work, and I am an attorney here representing LCO Outdoor Advertising LLC, which is the holder of the sign permit that was issued back in January this year. My address is 105 North Hudson, Suite 304, here in Oklahoma City, and also with me here today is Mr. Bryson Snyder, who is one of the owners of LCO Outdoor Advertising LLC. He's traveled from out of state to be here today to participate in this hearing. I do have a couple of handouts I'd like to provide to you. Just for reference purposes, I think there are things that you already have, but I just want you to have them available in paper form if we need them. The first of those is, I believe you already have the letter that we submitted to the clerk of the Board of Adjustment on March 2nd, or perhaps earlier, addressing the issues in this particular appeal. And then the second is a copy of the resolution that was approved by the City Council authorizing and approving the settlement of the lawsuit that had been brought by my client against the city following the refusal to rezone the property, and that was back in 2019. As I mentioned, LCO Outdoor Advertising LLC is the holder of the sign permit for this property located at 2445 Northwest 39th Street. It is our properly issued permit that Lamar is asking you to revoke with this appeal. To be clear, Lamar has no interest in this property. They have no interest in this permit, but they are bringing this request to you, asking you to revoke our permit on this property that we have leased for the purpose of erecting this permissible sign under the SPUD. We ask that you deny the appeal and uphold the decision of the building permit official, which is appropriately made. The reference has been made to the judgment that was entered by the district court, and I want to just give you a little bit of background information. Of course, this came out of the Planning Commission, the SPUD did with a recommendation for unanimous approval. Lamar appeared at the City Council hearing and objected. It did not receive approval at the City Council with a vote of 5-2. LCO Outdoor Advertising filed a lawsuit in Oklahoma County District Court challenging that denial. So the process proceeded then in the district court. Ultimately, there was a settlement that was reached between the city and LCO Outdoor Advertising where there was an agreed journal entry of judgment that was approved by the court. And that was finally done in January of 2022. So the copy of what is titled the corrected agreed journal entry of judgment is attached to the letter that you have. Under the terms of the judgment that was entered by the court, the City of Oklahoma City is prohibited and enjoined from enforcing any restriction that is inconsistent with SPUD 1134. So the agreement was that SPUD 34 would be allowed to govern the use of the property, and the city was enjoined by the court from applying any other regulation other than SPUD 34 with respect to the zoning. The SPUD allows a non-accessory billboard sign on the property as a permitted use conditioned as set forth in the SPUD. And Lamar's representative, Mr. Hickman, didn't mention it, but there were a number of conditions that were negotiated at the Planning Commission level with regard to the sign that dealt with things like its illumination, how it would be situated on the site, minimum separation from the residential district and from any residents. All of those are included in the ultimately approved SPUD.
So you mentioned this that the city's enjoined from taking any action that's contrary to the SPUD. Where is that in the journal entry? I don't know that I saw.
If
I mean,
you
I
look,
understand if you sort of, you by implication, I understand, but I didn't see any
it's on
express
page
injunction.
4 of the journal entry that was filed. It's attached to the letter. It's on page 4, filed January 4, 2022.
4, number 2.
Okay.
That's not the right.
This is the January one. That's the draft one. But I see it on here, so.
Yeah.
So there,
Okay, continue.
under the court's ruling, there it says, defendant, the city of Oklahoma City is hereby prohibited and enjoined from enforcing zoning restrictions inconsistent with SPUD 1134, amended as set forth above. So under the terms of the journal entry of judgment. So essentially, the court entered its judgment approving the settlement that SPUD 1134 would govern the use and development of this property. And the city was prevented from enforcing any other zoning restriction other than what is set out in SPUD 1134 as amended. I want to address briefly, because Mr. Hickman made reference to it, but under Oklahoma City's ordinance that provides for appeals from building officials to this Board of Adjustment, Lamar lacks standing. In order to bring an appeal to the Board of Adjustment from a decision of the building official, you have to be a, quote, person aggrieved. That's as set forth in section 4250.10B of the zoning ordinance. And then aggrieved is defined at section 2150.2 in the ordinance to say the term aggrieved shall have the meaning given to such term under Oklahoma law. And then the Oklahoma Supreme Court has ruled that for the purpose of appellate standing, aggrieved party is one whose pecuniary interest in the subject matter is directly and injuriously affected, or one whose right in property is either established or divested by the decision from which the appeal is prosecuted. That's from the case cited in our brief, the Walls versus American Tobacco Company case. And then it goes on to say, we have also held that an aggrieved party must have a personal stake in the litigation because of an actual or threatened distinct injury which has a causal connection between the alleged wrong and the actions challenged. Lamar has no pecuniary interest in the subject matter that is directly and injuriously affected. Lamar has no right in property that is either established or divested by the issuance of the sign permit. And Lamar has no personal stake in the matter of the issuance of the sign permit. There's no actual or threatened distinct injury which has a causal connection between the alleged wrong and the actions challenged. Lamar's only interest in bringing this appeal is in preventing lawful competition as a business competitor that owns other non-accessory signs in the general vicinity. The cases that Lamar has cited regarding standing are talking about where there is unlawful competition. This is an instance of lawful competition. The sign is authorized under SPUD 1134. It meets all of the city and state separation requirements. Lamar's complaint is that they have 5 billboards in this 1-mile stretch from Pennsylvania to May Avenue, and they don't want one that will be owned by a competitor in that same mile. That's the underlying issue here. That's what's really going on.
Sure, I understand the arguments. I just don't know that we need to reach the decision of standing in this case. I think we can address the merits of the case. And the standing issue, especially with sort of this language, aggrieved party and all, you know, that's, in some cases we just have to tackle that head on. I don't think this is a case where we need to tackle standing head on. But, I mean, it might shake out differently, but as, the way I see it, I don't think we need to address standing. I think we can say even if they have standing and then address the merits.
I would like to thank you for your comments, and I understand, Mr. Chairman. I would like to correct a couple of things that Mr. Hickman stated. First of all, he made and placed a great amount of emphasis on his representation that the only change in the SPUD from the C3 zoning district was to add a billboard on the property, and that is simply not correct. There were a number of uses that would otherwise be allowed in the C3 district that were eliminated in the SPUD, including automobile sales, gasoline and repair services, drive-through restaurants, pawn shops, payday loan stores, outdoor and personal storage. And then there were other modifications within the SPUD that placed restrictions on how the use and development of this property could be done. So it's simply not correct, the statement that Mr. Hickman made, that this was the, quote, only change to the SPUD. The other thing I want to point out with respect to Lamar is that this outrage that is being expressed about SPUDs being used to authorize billboards on property that would not otherwise allow a billboard, that outrage is newly acquired by Lamar. Lamar was one of the pioneers in using the SPUD process.
Mr. Work, I just really want to narrow down the issues to essentially what this body has authority to do. I mean, if we start going down the history between the companies and all that, we'll be here all day.
I understand, Mr. Chairman, and I will conclude my remarks. I think it's important, though. There were quite a lot of statements that Mr. Hickman made that are subject to a different view, and that is one of them. Lamar first made application for a billboard using an SPUD where that was the only change that was being made from the existing zoning back in 2007 at 116 Northwest 60th Street, SPUD 404, at west of Broadway Extension, south of 63rd. That was Lamar using an SPUD to get a billboard authorized. So this outrage is...
I addressed that with him. That's sort of the purpose of a SPUD in some cases, and sometimes they come in front of the Board of Adjustment, sometimes they go to Planning Commission, so I've addressed that with him.
Let me just conclude by saying, Mr. Chairman, that the building permit that was issued to LCO Outdoor Advertising at this location was appropriately issued because it was in accordance with the judgment of the Oklahoma County District Court in the lawsuit that was brought by LCO Outdoor Advertising. Lamar appeared at the City Council when the SPUD was presented. Lamar did not choose to make application to intervene in the lawsuit that was brought by LCO Outdoor Advertising concerning that denial. They could have done that if they chose. They did not do so. Now they're coming in after the judgment has been entered and wanting to complain about it. The judgment, however, is final and non-appealable at this stage. So that is the basis of the issuance of the permit. It was in accordance with the Oklahoma County District Court's judgment. It is therefore appropriately issued. There's no basis for this appeal by Lamar.
So, Mr. Work, what would you do if the city official had denied your permit and said, I'm not going to follow the agreed judgment?
We would have appealed that decision to the Board of Adjustment, I presume. I mean, that would be the appeal that would be available. I guess theoretically we could also seek to enforce the journal entry of judgment in the district court case and through some sort of enforcement proceeding in the district court. But, but the question for the building permit official, they have to do a review of the zoning. Is the zoning appropriate for the building permit that has been requested, in this case a sign permit? That's part of their review. In this case, in order to conduct the review of the zoning, you have to consider the judgment of the district court that determines that SPUD 1134 will govern the use and development of this property. So it's perfectly appropriate for the building permit official to look at the district court's judgment in this case because it's what controls.
I think they might be obligated to by the terms of the court order.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they might. And then if they did not do that, then I think you might have a case in front of the Board of Adjustment that says here's the law, here's the SPUD, here's the court order, and the city official didn't follow that. Okay, well, I was curious about that. So any questions or comments, Mr. Work? Okay, thank you.
Appreciate your attention.
Thank you. I don't think we have anyone else signed up to speak. Is there anyone else that would like to be heard on this matter other than the applicant? And then we'll hear from the applicant. Okay, Mr. Hickman?
Just a couple of final things. The SPUD that Mr. Work's referring to regarding Lamar, that was a condemnation action, completely different situation than creating a SPUD purely for the purpose of getting a billboard approved. Again, not that that's relevant to what y'all are considering, but I do feel at least the need to ensure that the record is clear and I respond to those allegations. Again, the comment about the only change was to add the billboard, those aren't my words. I mean, when we get to district court, I got the quotes that are on the record of what was said previously at the other proceedings, as well as the staff report. There may have been certain uses taken out of there, but the reason the SPUD was used was to create the opportunity to have the use of a billboard on a property that otherwise it was not allowed. Lamar is not afraid of competition, and this has nothing to do with Lamar wanting to address any kind of competition issues. Lamar competes all the time with any and all of the market participants, but rather, as Lamar has made clear to the city officials, the rules need to be what the rules are, and the rules need to be followed. And if the rules under the comprehensive plan by ordinance is to reduce the number of signs, then the city should not be rezoning for the purposes of allowing more billboard signs. If C3 zoning does not allow billboards that are on developed property, then the city should not be permitting billboards on C3 property that's developed. If C3 property limits the size of a billboard as 300 square feet, then the city should not be allowing billboards with 672 square feet on C3 zone property. And they should not be creating a system that circumvents those sign regulations by allowing a SPUD that the only material use change, whatever you want to say it, the words were, that was the change that was being made, was to allow a billboard, period. Your staff said it, the applicant even said it. And so we just want to know what the rules are. And if every time it's going to be whatever we can come forward with and you guys will approve, whether it's this Board of Adjustment, Planning Commission, or City Council, then it's the wild, wild west. Because otherwise there is no protection of investment of millions of dollars in digital billboards and other inventory in this community, period. Lamar doesn't want to be paying me to go to court to fight the city, I can promise you that. We worked very hard to reduce our litigation with ODOT through a relocation permit process. We don't want to be fighting the city, but we need to have set and consistent standards so that we know what the rules are in the market with our competitors. And right now, we don't have that. We don't have that. Through the SPUD and PUD process, there have been billboards allowed in locations that are otherwise not legal. And that's why we are here. And one last comment I just feel like I need to make again for the record. And I know, Mr. Chairman, you said that standing is not an issue, but the statements by Mr. Work, he's relying upon a case that deals with the Oklahoma Consumer Protection Act, which has nothing to do with any of the claims in this matter currently before you or in any of these legal proceedings. Like I said, that issue has already gone up on appeal by the city, and the Supreme Court and the Oklahoma Court of Appeals have ruled against the city and sent the case back to trial court, overruling the trial court, that Lamar has standing to make these arguments to protect its property interests in this community as a business owner, as a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and as an organization that has donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to support local nonprofits and to be a good citizen, corporate citizen in this community. And we just simply want some clear guidance on what is and isn't allowed, because Lamar has not been using PUDs and SPUDs like other competitors to create new locations for signs that would otherwise not be allowed. So we would ask that you revoke this permit.
Board members, questions, comments, or I can give my comments, I guess. I think I've already given most of my comments, but.
I'd argue the opposite. City council denied the permit.
Yeah.
That pretty much upheld what we're talking about here, saying, they didn't think it met the will of the city, and I believe this is the main reason why there's a sign moratorium going on right now also.
Yeah, I mean,
ever since signs have been a big problem.
On that point, I mean, it did seem like the grievance is probably with the district court, which both sides have sort of said. There's an opportunity to intervene or whatever. I don't know how much import that has here, but for us. But the fact remains, I think the primary grievance is probably with the district court and the proceedings that happened there. To your point, Mr. Privet, City Council actually agreed with them and denied the permit. So my comments have been expressed. I don't think that we have authority to rule on this case, or at least to say that the city official, we don't have authority to say that the city official did something wrong here and it needs to be reversed. I think the city official, all they did was follow the SPUD, follow the court order, which they were required to do. I think, frankly, there'd be some serious problems if they had not followed the court order and had not followed the SPUD and issued a permit consistent with the SPUD and with the court order. So I've been hyper-focused on one issue, and that's what did the city official do wrong here, and that's what the appeal is. And I don't see what they did wrong. I see some strong arguments on both sides about the validity of the SPUD and the proceedings below and the validity of the court order and those proceedings and all that. But when our narrow view as unelected members of this Board of Adjustment, our powers are very limited. And those powers, I do not think, include overriding city council, an elected district judge, or even the planning commission. I mean, I don't think that that's within our purview. Again, if the city official did something wrong, I think that's within our purview, but I don't see what they did wrong here. I know there's been a concern about sort of consistency and predictability and sort of the wild, wild west when it comes to what parties can expect and companies can expect in the city. But for my purposes of the Board of Adjustment, I'm terrified about the Wild West if we agreed and said that the city official did something wrong here, which would effectively be saying that the planning commission or city council or the district court did something wrong, West, because then our purview just explodes and we can start appealing and reversing all kinds of decisions that we don't have authority to reverse. So those are my thoughts, but I'm only one board member. So board members, any questions or comments that you have?
I've got a journal entry of judgment I've read twice, and SPUD 1134. And that's my issue. So my motion is we deny the appeal.
Okay. And then for the purposes of the record, I think we should identify some specific reasons we're denying it. And so I guess in this case, it would be that the board hasn't identified an error in the granting of the permit, and it was granted consistent with the SPUD and the
What I've read
journal
and
entry.
what I've heard is that the city official issued a permit that complies with SPUD 1134 in conformance with that judgment. So I move we deny the appeal.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny the appeal in case 14998 for the reasons stated in the motion. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And the motion's approved. The calendar, I think, is the next.
And we've got one additional item, is that we've made some adjustments to the meeting schedule. We're not adjusting any meeting dates, just the filing deadlines.
Oh, that's what that, I should have seen that, but I saw the strike through, but that was just for the filing.
It's just filing deadlines. The
Okay.
all the meeting dates stay the same.
Gotcha. Okay. Any questions or comments, board members, or a motion?
Move approval.
Second?
And a motion and a second to approve the amended, I guess we can call it, schedule for regular meetings for 2022. Cast your votes, please.
Yes.
Your voice vote. And they're approved. The next item on the agenda, communications and board reports. I have nothing on the agenda. Citizens to be heard. Don't see anyone. Other business. I do think we can raise, this came up in one of the earlier applications about home sharing. So, Ms. Jabbar, I don't know if you had any, I know you had some concerns about density, but I would like to somehow get that issue in front of city council. And I don't know how that is, but I share your concerns. And
Yeah, if there's a line, where is the line?
yeah,
Kind of
well,
thing, yeah.
and that's the issue that you don't really want to say in the middle of an application, but why would we deny her application and grant the 6 before? At a point, it's arbitrary, and then she has to argue in front of a district court why we did it. And so I want to make sure that we have all the tools available to us. Once we do start denying some of these, because I agree, we're getting just too dense, and we do need to start denying these, but we need some tools to do that, and the current ordinance doesn't really give us any tools to do that. So I think that it needs to be amended, and we can brainstorm on ways to do that, or whatever we need to do, but I do want to bring that issue in front of city council at some point.
How long has it been since the ordinance? Has it been just a year, or is it?
It's probably been a year and a half-ish.
Almost
Yeah.
2, yeah.
Yeah, so it's been a while, and the whole point, I
Seems
think.
like longer, I think.
I know, and the whole point was to sort of try that out and see how it worked, and now that we've done that, I think we have some ideas on ways to change it for the better, so. Any other comments on that?
I mean, I think one thing that would help, I appreciate the map, but I mean, I don't think that it's the best tool, and I don't know if there's another, to show the density in particular areas. You know, I mean, it's hard to really gauge that, but then, even if we had a map that showed, you know, literally this, it's, you know, this many feet from this one, or this many in this particular square mile, where do you draw the line? We can't make those rules.
Yeah, we need tools.
And so,
Yeah, the little blow up helped a bunch. You know,
Yeah.
it told me right away that 11 and 12 were right next to each other.
Yep, no, that helps a lot, and I think that's probably Cindy doing that, but that helps a lot.
No, it's not Sandy.
yeah, no, that's not a criticism of the map that we have. It's just, I feel like, you know, looking at that, even it's hard. But even if we had the most detailed map, I mean, what do you do with it,
Yeah,
right? We
we
still
need some
don't have
tools.
any structure for, or rules for.
Well, think about that. I mean, maybe we have to think about ways to do it constitutionally, but some kind of density criteria potentially in the ordinance. I've also thought of some kind of time restriction in the ordinance where it can be used as home sharing for a while, and then it needs to come off the home sharing market, and you know, something like that. But as I look at this map, I mean, I'm really concerned about the inventory of rental properties, because with every one of these that we pass, it pulls another rental property out and then brings the prices up on all of the remaining rental properties. So concerned about that, but I'm thinking through ways to give us some tools that are consistent with the Constitution. So, all right, any other comments? Okay, seeing no other business, we are adjourned.